first, I'd like to thank the candidates and all the volunteers who made this evening's event possible. And this program is being broadcast live as well as being recorded. It will be rebroadcast on local access channels. On Charter, that's 191, and Verizon, channel 33. It will also be on the Grafton Cable website, video on demand, graftontv.org. We do not allow others to record this event to prevent possible editing of proceedings. The link will be available for the recording on our Facebook page also, League of Women Voters of Grafton, Mass. Our moderator tonight is Beth McCollum. She has lived in Shrewsbury since 1996. She is a town meeting member and has been involved with the League of Women Voters for many years. We'll now turn the program over to Beth.
Good evening, welcome, and thank you very much. We are going to start with just a few outlines regarding the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. It does support or oppose legislation after study and consensus agreement among its members. We're going to begin this evening with you folks who are candidates that are running unopposed. We invite you to make a brief statement of up to 3 minutes. Karen and Ann are timing for us this evening. They will indicate to you when you have 15 seconds left. At the end of the time, an alarm bell will go off and your time will be up. So we're going to start with the library trustees. There are two 3-year term seats available. Dana Wilson, an incumbent, is not available to be here this evening. John Bobrisky is here. So John, I'll invite you to make a brief statement of up to 3 minutes.
Okay. So my name is John Bobrisky. I've been a Grafton resident for about 11 years. I'm a software developer at my day job, and I have 2 young kids in the Grafton school system, and we just love the library. We use it, weekly. We go there all the time, and we thought this would be a great way for us to give back to the library and make sure that it has everything it needs to succeed and grow with the town. So I think that's kind of about it.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. For the planning board, there are 2 3-year term seats available. We have this evening David Robbins, who is an incumbent. David, I'd like to invite you to speak next for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, for me, for the opportunity to briefly introduce myself, and more importantly for the contested candidates to have a chance to speak. I am, as you noted, my name is David Robbins. I have had the privilege of serving on your planning board now for 12 years, and I'm looking forward to serving for 3 more years, particularly to work with the planning board, other town boards and committees, and the town as a whole on updating the town's master plan to chart the future of Grafton, as it were. I'm very excited to be able to work on that with everybody, and I ask for your vote on May 17th so I can continue the work.
Thank you very, very much. Next, I'd like to invite Prabhu Venkatraman to speak.
Thank you. You're the second person to get my last name right. He always gets it right. So thank you for that. Seriously. So I wanted to reintroduce myself. My name is Prabhu Venkatraman. I have lived in town since 2013. As you see, I'm not from here. I'm from Amherst. I'm not to get that clear out. So we moved in from Amherst in 2013. We have 2 kids who we raised in town. My daughter graduated from Grafton High, and she's pursuing her dream to be an attorney. She's at Hofstra. I have a son. He's in middle school. He plays saxophone, and I know there are a bunch of musicians who are very active in Apple Tree Arts. I have seen many of you there. So I came in last time, 3 years ago when I got elected. There were two reasons. One is I have always been told to give back to the community. That's how I was raised, and I always believed in that. The second part was when we were talking within the Indian community in Grafton. There's a large population of Indian community. There are close to 550 families of Indian origin. But the participation in local governance is zero, right? Literally. So we wanted to do something. And then finally, everyone said, yes, we got to do something. And then no one raised their hand. So I said, okay, I work in Boston. I'm a vice president and a divisional CIO for a large insurance company. I find it difficult to manage my calendar. I said, I will do it. It'll be setting an example for others to step forward. We need to participate. It's an investment. It's an effort. That's the only way we can get the community to be part of the larger community. So I think I've been able to be successful in that. Second is I'm a civil engineer by training. And I learned a lot sitting on the planning board with this gentleman, with Bob and Justin and Linda. There is a lot that I could bring back to from my civil engineering days. I speak up. My wife asked me to say that very clearly, so I will say that I speak my mind, but I'm old school. I will disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that is very important, maintaining that civility. I don't raise my voice and scream other than my children, and that never works out well. So with that, I seek your support. I know I'm running Dave and I are running uncontested, unopposed at this point of time. I seek your support. My goal is to, again, like David said, for the master road plan, master plan that we have for town, I want to be able to influence some of those decisions there, working within the planning board and with the larger community. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Now I'd like to introduce Graciela Vargas, who is running for a single one-year term seat on the school committee. Later in the program, we're going to have other school committee contestants, but Graciela is running unopposed for a single one-year term seat.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me here and inviting me to be part of this event. I'm Graciela Vargas Baker, and I've been a resident in Grafton for about 15 years. We moved here when our youngest was a baby, where we bought our house. I have 3 children. A 21-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old. I have been serving in the school committee already since February of this year, as I was chosen as a replacement for a vacancy that was available at that time. I'm a school psychologist for my professional job, so schools are part of my everyday life. Breathe, sleep, eat, anything school. I have been in part of educational community for my entire adult life since I was about 23 years old. As a school psychologist, my job is to advocate for children and make sure that they're getting the best education possible that our school district is able to provide. I work with parents, staff members, teachers, community members in our district, as well as children. I'm hoping that I can continue to serve in the school committee after May. Hopefully I am elected, even though I'm unopposed. I hope I get your vote. So I can continue my work making sure that students in Grafton and our community are receiving the education that they're deserving. So like I said, I'm unopposed, but come May 17, if anything that I've said here or anything that you've heard before resonates with you, please vote for me. I'll really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. There is a single one-year term seat for town clerk. Candy LaValle is the incumbent. Candy is not available to join us this evening, so I'm going to read a short statement from Candy. Then we'll ask you folks, if you don't mind, to come back, and we'll have the next group come up to sit in front. So this is from, again, Candy LaValle, who's running for a one-year term as town clerk. Good evening. My name is Candy LaValle, and I am running for re-election as town clerk. I apologize for my absence, but I had a pressing prior engagement that prevented me from attending tonight. For those of you who may not know me, I have lived in town since 2003. I have worked for the town since 2008 and have been in the clerk's office since 2012. I was appointed as assistant town clerk in 2014 and since then have worked closely with former town clerk Donna Gerard to learn functions of the office. Since her retirement in 2016, I was appointed as interim town clerk and then elected to the position ever since. I am also the Public Records Access Officer for town-related requests. Over the years, I have had the opportunity to attend schooling and training to help me become educated and up-to-date with the role of working in the clerk's office. Attending conferences is crucial for our office to ensure we stay up-to-date on changes that are occurring every day to be able to inform and serve the public. Some of the schooling and trainings I have attended are the New England Municipal Clerks Institute and Academy, the Massachusetts Municipal Clerks Archival Records Program in cooperation with School of Library and Information Science at Simmons College, International Institute of Municipal Clerks Conferences, Worcester County and Massachusetts Town Clerk Conferences, and a mentoring program offered through the Clerks Association. In 2017, I received my Certified Municipal Clerk designation and recently received my Certified Mass Municipal Clerk designation through the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. I am currently working towards my Mass Municipal Clerk designation, which is the final designation related to the position. The clerk's office is responsible for many functions, such as elections, town meeting, voter registration, census, petitions, and nominations to vital records, dog licenses, posting agendas, and minutes for town boards and committees, or providing information for residents that all require our full effort and knowledge. With the help from my dedicated co-workers, Paul Cook and James Wicker, I am sure we will continue to provide the level of service that was implemented by past town clerks to get the job done, while improving and modernizing the way that we do things. Over the next 3 years, I plan to continue to serve the town's people as our office has in past years, with integrity, kindness, compassion, and dedication. We will strive to do our best every day with the manpower and resources we have to make this a successful year. As we have seen, elections and election-related matters are becoming more technical and progressive. I plan to tackle any changes and obstacles our office faces with the town, residents, and workers' best interest in mind. Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. Before I introduce the folks running for school committee, these are all 2-3-year terms. I have been asked to share a few general comments. We do request that there be no clapping, simply in the interest of time. All questions that we've received may not be asked. It's going to depend on how much time that we have. My understanding is that the League of Women Voters received some questions via email. I have those, and then some have been written and submitted tonight by folks who are here in the audience. If anyone in the audience does have an additional question, we're going to request that they write it down and hand it to either Ellen or Karen or Ann, and they can pass it along to me. We have quite a few, so I don't know that we'll be able to even get through the ones that we have, but everyone is very welcome to submit questions if they still have some. All of you are going to have an opportunity to make an opening statement of up to 3 minutes. Same rules will apply regarding timing. Karen and Ann will give you an indication when you have 15 seconds remaining. After the 15 seconds, unfortunately, we will ask you to end your statement. For written questions, you'll have an opportunity to speak for up to 1.5 minutes. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer the question. And then if anyone would like to offer a rebuttal, you're invited to do so. Please indicate to me that you'd like to participate in a rebuttal. You'll have 30 seconds for that. And then at the end, we'll ask everyone to make a closing statement if you desire. Those can be up to 1 minute. We are going to go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with opening statements with Stacy, and then Leora, and then Craig, and then Amy. And then question 1 will begin with Leora, and so on. And it will just depend on how many questions that we have. So are there any questions from the candidates about the proceedings?
No.
Okay. All right, then I'd like to begin by asking Stacy to provide an opening statement of up to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Grafton for having me here tonight. I appreciate the invitation. I'm very happy to speak this evening. Again, my name is Stacy Norton Bennett, and I've been a resident of Grafton since 2016. I have 2 school-age children, one in the Grafton school system, and I am currently a program director for a local nonprofit. I work with youth services and I work with at-risk kids. I currently, part of my duties in that position is to run an after-school life skills program for these high-risk and at-risk kids. So in addition to that, I have my master's degree in teaching secondary education, and I've been a former high school English teacher and a former adjunct college professor as well. I have extensive experience in education in both traditional and non-traditional settings, and I feel that that informs my run for the committee, for the school committee, and that is why I'm running, is to hopefully add my experience, bring a new perspective, a new voice to what we have already, and hopefully, be there also as the voice of some of the parents that have come to me and want to see some things change. So that's why I'm running. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Stacy. Leora, please make your opening statement.
Absolutely. Good evening. I'm Leora with an A. Nice to be here with all of you, and I thank the League of Women Voters for having me and all of the candidates here today. I think it's great for us all to sit here together and talk about the issues that matter to the parents of Grafton. I'm here and I'm obviously asking Grafton voters for their vote for one of the 2 open school committee seats. I do have 2 children in the Grafton Public Schools, and I have the not so unique but different experience of parenting 2 children with very different needs. I have a son with Down syndrome who receives special education services, and I have a daughter who is typically developing and a very motivated student in a very different kind of way. So I'm bringing my experience parenting both of these very different children to my desire to run for school committee. In addition, I recently ended a abbreviated because of COVID 2-year term as one of the co-chairs of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council here in Grafton, where I represented parents, very diverse group of parents of children who receive special education services. The parents I worked with in that role, some of them had very different experiences with the Grafton Public Schools than I did. Some of them had totally different philosophies on special education and different desired outcomes for their students. But what I was able to do is represent all of them fairly and help them to sort of navigate the system for their students. And that's kind of made me a passionate advocate for all students in Grafton. I'm aware that every family and every kid is different and has different needs. And our schools are individualizing the learning experience for kids every day. I saw that very much as a parent of a kid with special needs. And I've sort of brought those learnings to help my daughter, who's typically developing, sort of individualize her experience as well. I believe that all of our students, no matter what their learning profile, no matter where they come from, deserve an individualized experience that will help them reach their potential. And I believe that, life skills are necessary for every kid. So they need to understand money. They need to understand the working world. They need to develop self-confidence and self-advocacy skills. And they need to work with different types of people. That's what we do in the working world, and we want to prepare them for life after the Grafton Public Schools. Our schools today do so many incredible things in these regards, and I'm running for school committee because I very much want to represent every kid and every family and ensure that they learn the skills necessary to be successful after they leave our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Leora. Craig, we invite you to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone coming to this event. My name is Craig Julis. I've been a resident of Grafton since 2005 when my wife and I moved back. My wife grew up in town way back when. Prior to that, I'm trying to condense my life story into 3 minutes. So I'm one of three boys. I grew up in New Jersey. I attended Union College in upstate New York as a undergraduate in history, and then I earned my master's degree in my 5th year in teaching. I had the dubious honor of replacing my 8th grade history teacher in the same classroom that I had him in the late 1980s. I taught in New Jersey for 2 years. I then moved up to Mansfield in 2000 and taught for the next 7 years in a middle school. From there, I then became a middle school assistant principal in North Attleboro, and then a high school principal in North Attleboro. And then my last 2 assignments were as a middle school principal, both in North Attleboro and in Medway. As a classroom teacher, I challenged my students, all of my students, to enter the school year at position A and to leave at the end of the school year better than how they entered in September. And I believe that all of my students were capable of attaining high levels of performance. At different times, it took them different steps and different supports to get to that point. In running for school committee, I never really thought I would do this. I just left the educational field in the past year to pursue a different opportunity. Never again thought I'd do this. I've always sat on that side of the audience as opposed to sitting up here. To me, this is a natural kind of extension of that. Certainly does not make me an expert or qualify me for being on school committee. I do think I bring in a lot of different experiences in terms of a classroom teacher, working with students on the entire range from, A to Z. I've worked in curriculum revision in terms of rewriting curriculum for a grade level. I also, in North Attleboro, we also work to revise our curriculum throughout our entire school, matching a district level initiative. I've worked with school budgets. I've worked on school safety plans and drills, similar to what's happened here in the past month, in the past 2 months here with the ALICE training at the high school and the middle school. We did something very similar in North Attleboro. My decision to run for school committee comes on a couple different avenues. One, as I've spoken, most people always seek me out because they knew what I did for work, so they would always seek for that kind of advice. I want to represent all those different voices here in town and bring those to the table. I'd also like to ensure that we are developing independent thinkers and challenging them to be their best.
Thank you, Craig. Amy.
If I could
invite
just
you.
pause 1 minute, I could use a tissue from someone in the audience. I've got I'm having some sort of like bright light allergic reaction thing. So I'm tearing up. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I'm sitting here listening to everybody and trying not to
It's
wet.
very moving.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Amy Marr, and I'm seeking re-election to a 3-year seat on the school committee. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Grafton and Shrewsbury for hosting this event and for inviting all of us to participate. As many of you know, I'm a mom of 2, and I've lived in South Grafton with my husband Greg for almost 25 years. We chose to buy our home here in Grafton to raise our family primarily because of the school system and due to the relative affordability at the time. As we have a graduating senior this year, I spent most of my last 13 years volunteering in and for Grafton schools. It has been my honor and a privilege to serve on the school committee for the last 3 years. I'm running again because we have a lot of work to do as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. The challenges are many: the mental health of our students, the mental health of our staff and teachers, staff recruitment, financial challenges for families, staff recruitment and retention, and more. But I have every confidence that we can rise to meet the moment, resisting the urge to tackle every problem all at once, and in doing so, fixing nothing at all. I'm very proud of the work that I've been a part of so far on the school committee. I have served as the committee's representative on the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, where I have advocated for much-needed capital projects in the schools to be completed. I represented the committee on the Grafton Sustainability Commission, where I studied trends in area and sister community budgets to try and pinpoint what Grafton could be doing better. And of course, through ever-changing CDC and DESE guidance, I work to ensure the safety and best educational standards for Grafton students during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm also very proud of the way we have navigated the many challenges presented by the pandemic, as well as any district in the Commonwealth, and better than most. As we move forward into the next 3 years, I am dedicated to the following priorities. 1, student success. Meeting every student where they are and raising them up to be lifelong learners and responsible citizens including providing the social emotional learning skills they need to be successful in the world. 2, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring our schools are safe and welcoming for all students and for all staff. Fiscal responsibility, continuing to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and maintaining our physical facilities. 4, communication and openness, continuously improving communications with our families and students. I'm looking forward to sharing more during tonight's debate, and I hope to earn your vote on May 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So we're going to start with some questions now, and again, we may not be able to get to all the questions that were submitted. We will do our best. The number of questions that we ask will depend on the length of the answers and if there are rebuttals or no rebuttals. And our hope is to allow 45 to 50 minutes total for this segment. So I believe we started at about 7:20. So I'm guesstimating probably by 8 o'clock or 8:05 we will probably try to finish up if there are still remaining questions, and then we'll move on to the Board of Selectmen portion of the candidates evening. So since Stacy started off with her personal statement, Leora, we're going to ask you to start with the first response to question 1. Again, responses are for up to 1.5 minutes. Everyone will have an opportunity to answer. And then I will ask if anyone would like to make a rebuttal to a statement that's been made. So, Leora, the first question that we have this evening came via email. It's, how can we make the Grafton school community a welcoming place for historically underserved families? This could include persons of color, LGBTQ plus families, neurodivergent families, and families with persons with disabilities to participate either in parent or student leadership volunteer positions. And I'm happy to repeat the question if you'd like.
Nope, I think I got it, and it speaks right to one of my passions, so I thank you for picking that one first. Inclusion and equity is, as I sort of alluded to, a big passion of mine and a big part of the work I've done for my student with a disability and as part of CPAC. And it is something that I believe needs to be extended to everybody who is underrepresented. So can't be a passionate advocate for inclusion for people with disabilities if you're not a passionate advocate for inclusion for everybody who might be underrepresented. I am extremely encouraged that we have a DEI officer who is working here in Grafton. I think that's an incredible first step. I hope and really look forward to seeing us embrace any recommendations that come from her work and make the necessary changes that do make our school community more accessible and more welcoming to families who come from any of these underrepresented groups. I do think that today we are doing a lot in the classroom in terms of social emotional learning that will help students be more welcoming to others, and I hope to see that reflected in the behavior of the adults in our school community as well.
Thank you, Leora. Craig, I'll invite you to respond, and I'm happy to repeat the question if you need.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
So I think the first part of welcoming and including anyone into a school community is building the relationship with the student. I think that starts within the classroom. In my experience, when students have transferred into a district, that starts with their initial meeting with a guidance counselor and reviewing the different documents, the paperwork that comes with them. But then it comes with that relationship that the teacher has with the student on a day-to-day basis, and getting to know the student, getting to know their needs. And in many cases, that has led us to understanding, some of the struggles that the family may be encountering as they're moving into town or dealing with things from someone who's sick at home. We dealt with one family that had food issues at home. So I think working with those relationships helps you to understand who you're working with on a daily basis and how to best support them. I think as you work to include everyone, I think in my experience being in the classroom and being in the main office is treating everyone as equally as you can. in terms of your interactions and how things are handled moving forward.
Thank you, Craig.
I got the high sign over
Oh,
there.
Amy.
Yes, so some of the things we're already doing that are ongoing. We just got back an ADA study on our buildings, and we're going to be looking at that in the school committee in the next few weeks. And what that's going to tell us is, what projects need to be done in the schools to make the buildings more physically accessible. So that's an important piece. We're also going to be doing an equity audit across the district. We don't know what that quite looks like just yet, but that is something that we are committed to doing in the coming year. And that's going to help us identify gaps, identify areas in which students are not being treated equally, and being able to address those. We've done a lot of professional development with staff over the past year or so around how to speak to students in a way that they understand, regardless of whatever culture they come from, or maybe it's just using their pronouns to relate to them. That's really important to me as a mom. And we also have created a few affinity groups for these students so that they can find each other, so that like students can find like students. And there is acceptance and belonging in that. I think a lot of times people think that, well, we're segregating the kids now. No, they need to find each other, and then they can be part of the whole. And so I'm very proud of the work that we continue to do in this area.
Thank you, Amy. Stacy.
I am going to have you read the question, please, one more time.
Of course, I'm happy to.
Thanks.
How can we make the Grafton school community a welcoming place for historically underserved families, persons of color, LGBTQ plus families, neurodivergent families, and families with persons with disabilities, to participate either in parent or student leadership volunteer positions?
So one thing I haven't heard yet in the responses is that question is directed towards families, not just students. So one of the tenets of my platform is transparency and communication. And I talk a lot about how we need to reach out to families and parents. So I think the Grafton school system is doing a nice job in terms of inclusion with the students, but I think what I'd like to see, and one of my motivations for running for school committee, is being able to spend more time with outreach and spending that time reaching out to families, parents, moms, dads, grandparents, whatever that family may look like, traditional, non-traditional, and we need to have a conversation with those families, not just the students. So I'm a big advocate of getting parents involved. So I think it's an excellent question about how can we get parents in leadership positions. And I think that's going to start with parents attending school committee meetings, with families, parents coming in with questions and asking, getting more involved with the school system and their child's learning and seeing how things are working in the school system and being part of the conversation. And I think one thing that the school committee can do is enable that, is provide that outreach, provide that outlet, so that people aren't just coming to the committee, but the committee is reaching out to those families.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Any follow-up comments or rebuttal? You would have 30 seconds if you chose to. Okay. Next question, and for this question, Craig, we'll start with you. There has been a lot of talk this campaign season about social and emotional learning in the schools. Can you tell me what you know about the social emotional learning curriculum at Grafton Public Schools and why you either support or oppose it?
So in terms of social emotional learning, in terms of looking at, as you look at the Atlas Rubicon that's online, you can see what's supposed and planned to be happening within the classroom in terms of your health curriculum, your the emotional learning that's happening from my students, hearing what they're going through within the schools. I don't hear it much from the high schooler. The middle schooler, I actually learned about it through someone calling me about something that they had heard. I think in terms of social emotional development within any school, it needs to be embedded within the curriculum. So as students are learning, and I'll use myself as an example as a social studies teacher, how to work those different skills into a lesson or into the daily work that we're doing. So it's not seen as something that's separate. It's seen as something that they're doing in their daily work. whether it's interacting with their peers in like a verbal debate, they're disagreeing, they're discussing something that they're doing within a classroom. I think in terms of social emotional learning, the other piece of it is making sure it matches where the students are in terms of their own development as they progress through their time as a student.
Thank you. Amy.
Thank you. So first I want to talk about what social emotional learning is. It is skills that we all need for life, skills that kids need to be successful in school. We're talking about self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness, and self-management. These are all skills that kids who had them before the pandemic have lost. So if we see a curriculum in the middle school being used to be more kind of overt about it, that's the reason why. These kids have forgotten how to be friends, they have forgotten how to interact with peers, how to show respect for teachers. These are all things they need to know in life. In the lower levels, there is a little bit of a curriculum that's put in, I believe it's on Fridays in the elementary schools, and they do a little like social emotional learning module, and that's it. It's not something that's happening every single day. It is being integrated into the curriculum, but it's also being done as an overt piece, and that way parents know what's going on. I can't imagine why this has become such a huge issue. These are the kinds of skills that my parents say, I wish they would teach kids these things. Well, we do. Just like we're teaching them how to calculate, their mortgage payment, and we're teaching them how to balance a checkbook. We teach them all of those things. And we do it while teaching all the important subjects as well.
Thank you, Amy. Stacy.
So to the question itself, whether you're for or against it, I don't think that's the question, for or against it. I don't think, based on what Amy had just said, how can you be against teaching kids those things? I think the question might be better phrased as, how do we implement that? How do we, teach that?
And just for clarification,
yes,
it's why do you either support or oppose it?
Right.
Which is,
so I support it.
Okay.
And I support it in possibly a different way than it's being presented now. I'm old enough to know and remember in teaching and education that social emotional learning is nothing new. It's been happening in schools. A well-trained, professionally developed teacher with experience will know how to tend to those needs in a specific classroom based on the needs of those individual students. So my only concern is the prescriptiveness of a SEL program that may come across as one size fits all, but the classroom teacher is the one that knows best about the needs of those individual students. If you've ever been a teacher and you've had students come in year after year, that cohort, that group is different every year, and the needs are different every year. So you have to have the freedom as a teacher to implement the skills that are needed based on the group and how they're presenting to you and the needs. And I just, hope that teachers will have and still do have that freedom to be able to do that.
thank you, Stacy.
Yeah.
Leora.
So in response to the question as to whether I am for or against social emotional learning, I am very much for it as somebody who has managed large groups of people in the corporate world for much of my career. Those are the skills I look for. I don't care if you majored in marketing and advertising and PR and you're going for a PR job. I care if you can think. I care if you can take accountability. I care if you can work in groups with people and regulate your emotions and deal with people who you may not always agree with. And that's what we're doing. And my understanding is that aside from some overt lesson plans in the youngest grades where we're teaching big feelings, small feelings, this is happening as part of the curriculum, and it's being, modeled for kids throughout what they're doing in class.
Thank you. And does anyone have a follow-up comment or question or rebuttal? Okay. So the first two questions that we did came from emails that were sent to the League of Women Voters. We did get some that were submitted this evening, so for the amount of time that we have, I will try to toggle back and forth. This question came from the audience. It says, I see that Grafton High School does not rank in the top 1,500 schools in the U.S. but Sutton, Hopedale are on it. What do we need to do to improve our ranking? And we're going to start with Amy.
Is it
It's your turn.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. Can you read the question again, please?
Of course.
I totally thought I was going to get to listen to Craig.
No.
I don't mind.
So
I'll go in.
I see Grafton High School doesn't rank in the top 1,500 schools in the U.S., but Sutton, Hopedale are on it, presumably on the
Okay.
higher ranked. I guess what do we need to do to improve our ranking?
At the risk of sounding flippant, I guess my response to that is, why would we? Why is that a benchmark for our district? We need to be meeting the needs of the students in Grafton, not worrying about what some publication puts together as a list of the top 1,500 schools based on survey data they receive from those schools. Those surveys are put together through self-reporting. I know this because I used to work at WPI, and the U.S. News and World Report Best Colleges list, it was insane how much time we put into responding to this humongous survey to try to get WPI from 51 to 50. What did it get us? Absolutely nothing. I don't worry about those kinds of things. I worry about the students, whether they're meeting their educational goals, whatever they are for the individual kid, and whether they're successful after graduation.
Thank you. Stacy.
So, with rankings, what are the rankings used for? You know, and so I would say on this one, I would have to agree with Amy. I don't feel that rankings are indicative of what we can, you know, how successful we are with our students, just like I don't believe MCAS is a good measure of how kids are doing. MCAS and rankings are really, you know, forgive me for saying this, but maybe a way to sell homes in the area. It really doesn't, I would agree, it doesn't matter. The community itself, the taxpayers who pay to have schools here, they're the ones that, as a school committee, we would answer to. They're the ones, if they're happy, and I've heard wonderful things about, you know, people are happy with the Grafton school system as a whole. So if that's the case, that's who we answer to. We don't answer to those people sending out those surveys. And we have plenty of residents here, right? We don't need to attract any more. I think we've got our building scope on scale. So, you know, I think we agree that we would need to focus on students here, families here, how we're doing, and maybe we need to talk about what our own benchmarks are. And that's, again, where, you know, I would say we bring in our stakeholders, our families, and our students, and say, you know, where do we want to be? And let's discuss that, because that is a town priority.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Leora.
So I'm going to agree with Amy and Stacy and go a little bit further and say that I think those rankings tend to be heavily weighted to favor wealthy school districts with wealthy families where the median home price and the median income is very high. They are not typical. The tax base is different. They're usually not particularly diverse communities either. And, you know, there's an argument to be made that some of those ranking lists of schools are not fair and not equitable. I agree with Stacy that, you know, you have to look at the money in our district. I think that if you look at our students' achievement, at the number of college level courses that our high schoolers are taking, at their success in AP courses, and the success of all students who may not follow a traditional academic path. And if you juxtapose that against our per pupil spending, we're doing an amazing job. And we can only improve and continue to be successful with our students. But to me, that's what I would look at, you know, per pupil spending versus our record of success. And I think by any measure, we're doing quite well there.
Thank you, Leora. Craig.
So I'm going to agree with Amy, Stacy, Laura. And much like Amy, as a high school principal, I think one of our parents came in with the Newsweek article that had us non-ranked at all. So I got a I guess, told to look into how to do this. And Tammy's point, it's subjective, it's prescriptive, this would be like grading our student performance solely on MCAS and not the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis within the classrooms. I think the better measure of what we're doing, if you look at a student in a classroom, yes, you take MCAS data, you take other benchmark assessments that are common within ELA department within a grade level. But then you also look at the student's growth over time in terms of, again, how they're progressing through their career here at Grafton Public Schools. I think the other point is a high school principal looking at what our students did after graduation. How many students earned Abigail and the Adams Scholarship for performance on their MCAS, but also in terms of what were they doing 2 years after graduation, 4 years after graduation. The students who went to a 2-year college, what were they doing after that? As well as our students, I think one of the best moments for me as a teacher was that student who went the non-traditional route and was very successful. I think those are the ways that we measure. Just as in a classroom, we're using all those different metrics to measure our student performance. We should do that as a district.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. So everyone's had an opportunity to share their thoughts. Is anyone hoping to do a follow-up?
I'm not going to rebut my own statement. Okay. But I wanted to actually kind of latch on to something that Craig talked about, and that was how we use the benchmark data. When we look at MCAS, we're not looking at how did Grafton students do on the MCAS compared to this community, that community, or even the state average. What we want to look at is how did last year's grade 3 students do on their MCAS this year in grade 4? What was the growth? That's what we're looking at. So I know the newspapers write about it and the TV shows talk about it. That's not what MCAS is for. And I think a lot of parents probably don't realize that.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep,
We're at time. Yep, appreciate it. All right. So for question 4, we're going to take another question. Oh, and I'm sorry, does anybody else have a follow-up comment? Okay. So for question 4, we're going to take another one from the audience. We're going to go back to start with Stacy. I'll say the question. If anyone needs it repeated, just let me know. So a question from the audience. What do you think is Grafton Public Schools' biggest challenge, and how, as a school committee member, would you help?
So we are on the cusp. There's probably 2 things that I would say are the biggest challenge. One is the learning loss that occurred during the pandemic. I think Amy had already mentioned that. But also we're on the cusp of Children's Mental Health Week, which starts this coming week. And it's very much on my mind. And it's one of the things that I'll be talking about this week on my platform is the mental health crisis. And, you know, we often focus on the students, but it's very much present for our educators as well. Both stakeholders have been under incredible amount of pressure to pivot and do what we could during the pandemic to keep education going, to keep learning going. And I think it was uncharted territory, so nobody really knew how to go about it, what to do, and everybody did the best they can. But there were definitely some, I think, long-term consequences that we may see from all that. You know, the social isolation, the loss, mentally, psychologically, academically. So that's something I think Amy alluded, or she did say that, you know, students are having trouble socializing again as they come back into school, and thus the need for the social emotional learning. So I think students cannot learn unless they're comfortable, you know, unless they're fed, they're comfortable, they're feel welcome. There's so many factors that have to happen before learning can occur. So we really need to make sure that the students are coming in a good space. And I think we need to pay particular attention to that. And I think one of the questions was about welcoming students, and we need to make sure that we can welcome them in a good space.
Thank you, Stacy.
Sorry.
All right, Leora.
It's like a mutual admiration society up here because I do to sort of play off of what Stacy's saying. You know, we do have a community of learners who are coming back from a shared national trauma, basically. You know, everything has been interrupted. Social, you know, certainly at the middle school level, I think you're seeing a lot of kids who missed out on some social development for 2 years, and they're learning how to interact with their peers. And that plays into issues of inclusion and equity. When kids are uncomfortable, they often retreat into themselves, into their small world of the people they know best. And so already students, for example, with disabilities, when they move, say, from the elementary schools to the middle school, have a bit of a harder time being included because of the nature of middle school academics. Not only kids with disabilities, but other underrepresented groups. We want to make sure that Grafton, not just the school buildings, which are extremely welcoming and really working to be equitable, but the students are given the skills, which goes back to, again, some of the social, emotional, and learning that is happening in our buildings.
Thank you, Leora.
Sure.
Craig.
So I think coming out of this, one piece, and an example of it, I think you're looking at the human resource. You have the student side of it, you also have the teacher side of it, where teachers essentially overnight went from traditional in-person learning to remote learning in the span of 3 weeks. And even in my experience within that 3 weeks, we saw students not knowing how to interact because they could not physically see their friends. So how do you keep the teachers that you have? How do you attract teachers now into a profession where this is the most recent experience for all of us? So I think that's one key piece of it. I think the other piece of it is, as Leora mentioned, and I think Stacy mentioned, you have students who are out of school, and as I've mentioned before, some things you can do remotely, some things are best done in person. So you have younger students who missed out on in-person instruction in terms of learning the foundational knowledge for reading. So how does that either get addressed, identified, and monitored over time, so as the student gets older, those issues don't become compounded. You have students at the middle school level, and transition from any grade level or different school is always challenging for students. And now you have students who are transitioning without those social skills into more independent roles, and how do we best support them moving forward? I think the last piece with all of this, as I've mentioned, is there's a lot of people out in the public that don't feel that they're being heard. My work in the classroom and in the main office has always been to listen to those different points of view and bring that to the table.
Thank you, Craig. Amy.
So a lot of what everybody up here has said is true. A lot of it comes back to mental health. We have a mental health crisis in this country, in this state, in this town, and it's going to be probably a decade or more before we're out of it. We're simply not equipped to, as a country, deal with so many people who are so sick. My biggest concern as somebody who's on the committee now is recruitment and retention of specifically teachers and paraprofessionals. There are other positions that are needed, but on any given day in the high school, we're having students having to group together in the auditorium because we don't have enough subs to cover. We have one substitute, I think, that goes day to day, and when she's out, it's teachers covering for each other. It's extremely stressful. It's not helping the situation. We need to be able to give our teachers some relief. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that I continue to support the administrative team's solutions. They come up with new and creative ideas on how to recruit these folks, how to get them in. Using college students when they return next month as substitutes will definitely help. But once they go back to college in the fall, we'll be in the exact same position. So I don't have all the answers. I just know that we need to support the admin team.
Thank you, Amy. Any follow-up, rebuttal, additional responses from question 4? Okay. We'll start with Leora for question 5. I'm going to go back to an email question. And depending on timing, we'll do this question. If there's time for an additional question, we'll do it. If not, then we'll move on to final statements. So question 5. Do you think parent communication is lacking? If you do, how do you propose to address it?
Okay, so as I am not yet a member of the school committee, I can speak from my experience. And I think that I have a student with an IEP, so I may have a different communication experience with the schools because I'm speaking with them regularly about my student, which is sort of translated into me making sure I'm speaking regularly with them about my other student. But I will say this, I think that The admin, the administration in each building where I've had a student has been incredibly open. I have had issues, I have had problems, and I have never felt that I wasn't heard. In fact, I've been able to meet with Jay Cummings, with school building principals, pretty quickly when I've had an issue. So I think that the buildings are very responsive. We are using technologies in new ways so that, you're getting regular newsletters from all of the school buildings. You're hearing from the teachers. I'm getting updates from most of my children's teachers as well. I feel very good personally about the level of communication coming out of our schools today. It can always be improved, and certainly parents can ask for more communication. There are amazing technologies out there now that can help us, connect even better than we are.
Thank you, Leora. Craig.
So, coming at it from a different perspective, I think, as I've reached out with questions and things like that, whether it's at North Street, the middle school, or the high school, responses have been, I always worked on the sundown policy, so you have 24 hours to respond. I've never had to wait more than 24 hours for a response, which is professional. It's the right thing to do for any situation. I think in some cases, I always, as a building leader, even as a teacher, I struggled with your kid's doing great, why am I didn't want to always reach out when it was a negative, try to reach out when it was a positive, and it was always a struggle, and I think it continues to be a struggle for teachers to try and reach out when it is a positive thing. The responses are always kind of funny when it's a positive thing, though, because they don't believe that that's why you're calling. I think with the advent of technology, using things, I use Sway, you can use the different systems that connect to the student information systems to send those emails. I think those are all great ways to leverage technology. I think in some cases the best way is that positive phone call that happens from time to time, and not always having it be a negative. But I do think communication is a very important part, and I think when things are communicated, parents feel part of the process and part of what's going on, as opposed to hearing something, say, secondhand or thirdhand, which always, in my experience, kind of, I don't want to say breeds just trust, but in some cases cause undue stress.
Thank you, Craig. Amy.
So I think we've definitely improved communication with parents and families over the pandemic. I think we've been able to leverage a lot of different technologies to reach parents. We created the Facebook group for issues at a district level. Any parent can post to that group a question as long as it's a district-wide question, not a building-specific question. Our principals are very responsive. I have found that teachers are very responsive. If they're not, that's why we have a chain of communication. So if a parent emails a teacher and doesn't get satisfaction, they can then go up the chain until they reach the point at which they feel that they're being heard. I will say that there was only one issue in the last year that I heard from parents about at the school committee level, and y'all know what that is. It's masks. Nothing else reached the school committee level. So I have to believe that parents are either using the chain of command, not aware of it somehow, because we do send it out at the beginning of every year and we post about it frequently. But I would encourage any parent to review that document and to advocate for your kid. If you're not getting what you think you need for your child, that's what that is for. And I want to see parents do that more.
Thank you, Amy. Stacy, will finish with you.
Okay. So as Leora said, I have also had a close relationship with the special education department. And I know there's been changes made, I think, in the last 2 years or so with the new director and some new staff. And I've been incredibly pleased with, the communication coming out of that office now and the attention provided and calls, returned in a timely manner. So I've been very happy with that. But I do think we're talking about maybe two different levels of outreach, as I've said earlier, or communication. You've got the school level communication from teachers and classroom teachers and administrators. But when larger items are up for discussion, such that the school committee would have to decide maybe certain policies, that is where I think we may need to do more outreach to families and parents, as I've said before. I think one of the things that I had recommended in my platform was having something sort of like a coffee hour, as our legislators do when they're in the area, and they'll come in and they'll have kind of office hours where constituents can go in and talk about their concerns or anything specific. I would like to see the school committee do that. If I am elected, I would like to sort of kind of be the person that, starts that in the sense that let's reach out to parents and see what their concerns are, because there are many reasons why a parent might be intimidated or concerned about bringing issues to the school committee. So it's not that they don't exist, but that they might not feel comfortable doing so.
Thank you, Stacy. Any follow-up comments? Or
I do have one.
Leora?
I will say this, I've been attending school committee meetings regularly and often being the only person in the audience who's here live and able to grab school committee members afterwards to ask about specific issues or questions. The only meeting I've attended that had pretty big attendance was the mask meeting. So, the meetings are posted in accordance with open meeting law. They're open to everyone. They're great. They're fun. I think we do have an opportunity
Thank
to
you,
talk to
Leora.
the school committee.
So I think we have time for one more.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, of course. I apologize.
No,
Yes.
no problem.
Yes.
And that's fantastic to hear. I watch them on TV because I work till about 7 o'clock at night on Tuesday nights. So it's hard for me right now to get there. So I'll rush home and I'll turn on the TV and I'll watch them. So that's wonderful to hear. But I think, like me, there's a lot of parents and people that work. Some people work night shifts. People are working different shifts. They can't always make the meeting. So that's just one other avenue to allow parents to reach out, even students, whoever has a question. And, it provides another avenue, another opportunity for parents if they can't make the meetings.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah.
Craig and Amy, would you like another opportunity? Two individuals have had another response. Would you like to?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to question 6. We'll start with Craig, and then at that point, if there are rebuttals, that's fine. Then I think that we'll move into closing statements and finish up. Is it too late for a question? Oh, okay. So I apologize. I've been advised by the League of Women Voters that for time constraints, we are going to move directly to final statements. We left with Craig being the next first speaker. So Craig, if you would, you have 1 minute for your closing statement. Again, Craig Julis.
So thank you again for having me. So as I look forward to May 17th and the election, some things just I'd like everyone to keep in mind. One, my goal in this is to ensure that all the voices within the town of Grafton are being heard and bringing that to the table. I think part of that work of moving from good to great is not discounting differing opinions. I think the goal of improvement is taking those differing opinions and those dissenting opinions and bringing that together to make what we're doing that much better. As I look at students, my goal both in my educational career has always been to move our students forward, to challenge our students with the appropriate levels of support, to ensure that they're getting what they need where they are. And I think in the end, as I've said before, what we do in Grafton in our public schools is one of the best products, as most towns will brag about their educational system. And I think that's how we move from good to great.
Thank you, Craig. Amy.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for your work tonight. This was wonderful. I'd like to thank you and the League for hosting the event. This is such an important event in Grafton's political season, and I'd like to thank everybody who's here, who's watching at home, who's participating. I hope everyone's learned a lot from this exchange. I know I have. And I hope you all have a better idea of who I am, what I stand for, and how I will represent and advocate for Grafton students over the next 3 years if elected. This is a critical moment in public schools, and I'm confident that I can help the district rise to the challenge. If you want to learn more about me, please visit my school committee page at facebook.com/amymar4sc. And I humbly ask for your vote on May 17th.
Thank you, Amy. Stacy.
So thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful opportunity, my first time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm very encouraged by what I hear by all the candidates. And, oftentimes elections can be incredibly contentious, especially in local municipal elections. And I think this is a wonderful representation of the fact that we're not all that far apart from each other. With that said, though, I think some of us bring just a slightly different perspective, different take on things. I have a different approach, and I hope that if that approach resonates with the Grafton voters, that they'll vote for me on May 17th. I do also have a Facebook page, Stacey Norton Bennett, for Grafton School Committee on Facebook, and email staceyforschoolcommittee@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Stacy. Leora.
Thank you. I'm happy to round it out, and I want to thank everybody for having us here today. This was a great experience and an important one for the voters. Just to kind of summarize, if it didn't come across, I'm passionate about three things. One, representing every single student in our district. Two, promoting inclusion across our school communities. Everyone needs to feel comfortable, safe, and respected in our school communities. And three, truly living up to our school's mission of preparing students to be lifelong learners and responsible citizens, which means educating the whole student beyond simply focusing on academics. And we've talked a lot tonight about ways that our schools are already doing that. As adults, we set the tone and we build the environment that will make this, foster these goals for the students. And we don't need to all agree or have the same experience in order to build a school community that works for every student. I've advocated for and advised. Please vote for me on May 17th. Leora for Grafton School Committee.
Thank you, Leora. Thank you so much, Stacy, Leora, Craig, and Amy. As a reminder to everyone who's watching, there are 2 seats for 3-year terms on the Grafton School Committee. Thanks to everyone for your participation, and good luck to all.
Thank you.
Everybody else set? Okay. Thank you, and I'd like to welcome all of our candidates for the Board of Selectmen. There are... Oh, sorry.
We're select board.
Oh, Select Board.
Oh, I wrote it wrong. It's select board. I wrote it wrong, and I know it's select board. I wanted that. Okay, that was me, my mistake.
No worries at all. So we have 2 seats for 3-year terms on the Select Board in Grafton. We have 3 candidates here with us this evening: Anne Marie Foley, Andrew Jefferson, and Richard Whitney. Thank you all very, very much for attending. One candidate, Carl Palmer, was not available to attend. Carl did send in a statement, so if it's okay, I'm going to begin by reading Carl's statement. Same rules will apply with the Select Board portion of the meeting. We'll have about 45 to 50 minutes in total. It's 8:15 now to give you a sense of the timing. You'll have 3 minutes for an opening statement. We'll have 1.5 minutes response time for each question. We have some that were sent via email and some from the audience here. If you want to offer a rebuttal or a follow-up statements, 30 seconds will be allowed for those, and then you'll have an opportunity to make a closing statement of 1 minute. Karen Ann will be doing the timing again. You'll get a notification at 15 seconds, and then an alarm will sound at the end of your time, and you will need to finish your remarks at that point. So I'm going to begin by reading a statement from candidate Carl Palmer. If you will let me know when we approach the 3-minute mark, I'd be grateful. I first want to apologize for not being able to attend this evening's event. This was a result of my wife and I having postponed family plans some time ago due to COVID restriction, and unfortunately these plans were made well before I had decided to run for Select Board. I want also to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and giving the candidates a chance to speak to the residents of town. For those that don't know me, I want to let the voters know that I am a 27-year resident of Grafton. My family is originally from Grafton. I grew up in Worcester and moved back to Grafton when I was in my 20s and have lived here ever since. I have raised my family here in Grafton. I've been with my lovely wife Christina for the past 23 years. Together we have 4 children, 3 of whom attended Grafton Public Schools. 2 of my boys are in law enforcement, my stepson is a software engineer, and my youngest, my daughter, is a business student at Worcester State University. I have been an IT professional for 25 plus years. The last 7 years have been spent in the area of cybersecurity as a senior cyber security analyst and Tier 3 Security Operations Center analyst. Being in cybersecurity, I have to investigate issues with a very analytical nature in mind, and I would take the same common sense approach to addressing issues in our town. I really want to do what is best for the town of Grafton and its residents. I've also spent the better part of my life trying to give back. All the best jobs I've ever had were volunteer. Those are the most rewarding. The best job I've ever had was being a dad to my children, which no one can put a price on. I've helped coach a number of Grafton town sports, most notably ice hockey, having coached for the old Grafton Wachusett Lakers for 14 years. At a previous IT job, I developed and managed on my own an IT equipment donation program where I donated previously used IT equipment to such organizations as Veterans Inc., the Child Life Center at UMass, as well as daycare centers, mental health facilities, and schools. The last 2 companies that I worked for, I was on their committees for community outreach. When all my kids left the nest, I also volunteered for Big Brother, Big Sister. I'm running for select board first and foremost because I love this town and I feel like it's my time to step up to the plate and serve. I have no other motives to run other than to serve the town to the best of my ability. I have no financial ties, no pet projects, nor any special interests related to the town. I want the town of Grafton to be as fiscally responsible as possible while maintaining the high level of services this town provides its residents. I also fully support our small businesses, our law enforcement and first responders, our veterans, affordable housing for the elderly, as well as maintaining our conservation and preservation lands. There are a number of projects and developments that will be coming up over the next few years that will keep the town and the board busy. Trying to maintain a small town feel is certainly thank you. Statement from Carl Palmer. We're going to go in alphabetical order again for select board. Again, we have Anne Marie Foley, Andrew Jefferson, and Richard Whitney. Anne Marie, you'll take the first question. I'm sorry. You'll do opening statement first, and then Andrew, you'll take question one. So Anne Marie, if you'd like to begin with your personal statement, you have 3 minutes. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Anne Marie Foley, running for Select Board. I want to thank the Grafton and Shrewsbury League of Women Voters for hosting this. They always do a great job in trying to work on civic engagement in our town. I appreciate that. Also, thank you to GCTV for documenting this, and for the audience here and certainly at home for coming out and getting more informed. My husband and I stumbled upon Grafton about 30 years ago. Before we were getting married, we were trying to figure out where we would live. I was working in the South Shore and he was out in the Springfield area. And so we came into the Common and just immediately thought, this is the place. This is so picturesque and that small town feel. And so this is where we landed. I graduated from Boston University undergrad with a degree in physical therapy, and then I have a master's in public health, from Northeastern University. I'm a physical therapist now by training. Again, like I said, we moved here 30 years ago. We have 2 children. My son Robert has went to Vermont Law School and has an environmental law JD from VLS. And my daughter, who's here tonight, is 26 years old, and she has a Master's of Art in Teaching from Quinnipiac University. As I said, I'm a physical therapist. I started my career in Braintree Hospital, inpatient rehab. I primarily worked on a head injury unit for about 10 years. Then I moved into hospital administration for some time. I managed a large outpatient clinic in the Milford area, and then I decided to start my own practice. So currently I serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities all over central Massachusetts. I service group homes and day programs for a variety of agencies. I'm the past president of the Central Massachusetts chapter of the American Physical Therapy Association, and I'm a former adjunct professor in the DPT program at MCPHS College in Worcester. In terms of volunteer and board work, just kind of go through things that I've done here in town and elsewhere. I was a member of the Grafton Recreation Commission for about 10 years, including serving as president of that commission, the Skate Park Committee, the Super Park Renovation Committee. I was the president and founder of the Fields Coalition. I volunteered over the years in the Grafton Public Schools and through PTG work when my kids were younger. I'm currently the treasurer, and I was a past president of the Grafton Tennis Club. I was a treasurer of Troop 107 when my son was a member of that troop. He went on to become an Eagle Scout, which we're proud of. I'm a longtime member of the League of Women Voters, including serving as secretary and past president. I was involved in the plastic bag ban reduction as well as the styrofoam reduction program that we instituted here in town, or the bylaws, I should say. And additionally, I initiated the curbside composting program that we currently have a couple of years ago. I started the Green Up Grafton group, which is a Facebook group, and now I now have over 600 members as part of that. I'm currently part of the ARPA committee, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, and I'm the president of a condo association up in Vermont. I'm running for select board because I am dedicated to forward progress for Grafton. I'm committed to fostering an engaged and informed community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Andrew, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Andy. I'd like to also start off by thanking the League for assembling this debate tonight, giving us a chance to present our platforms, and thank you to everybody in attendance and everybody watching at home for your participation. My grandparents, Rose and Art Carlson, moved here and bought their first house. They raised a family in Grafton. My grandfather spent time as a tree warden here. Eventually, they started their own nursery and landscaping business. When my brother and I were younger, we spent the bulk of our summers out here, unofficially helping out in the nursery, officially driving my grandmother nuts. When I was old enough, they offered me my first part-time job. 17 years ago, my wife and I had the opportunity to buy our first house, and were able to do so in Grafton as well. We're raising 2 boys out here, both of whom attend the Grafton Public Schools, where my wife Jennifer also works as a paraprofessional assisting kids with behavioral issues. I've had the pleasure of serving on the Finance Committee for the last 2 years. In my first year, I was one of the members assigned to the school budget review. From there, I was one of 2 members appointed to school committee oversight. I was last year one of 2 members appointed to the TRICOM, which is equal parts school committee, finance committee, and select board, charged with keeping clear and open lines of communication between those 3 bodies. We've already begun the process of meeting with the superintendent and the town administrator to begin 5-year budget and growth projections. Towards the end of last year, we had a finance committee resignation, which gave me the opportunity to move over to the library building and planning committee. That was my first exposure to a construction project of that size. Over 20 years in marketing and PR, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of clients who focused on recycling and waste reduction outreach, so it seemed a natural fit that I apply for that committee when it was reformed last year as well. We've already begun looking at the town's waste hauling contract and trying to reduce that inflation on our budget. Growth and change are inevitable, and they're something that Grafton will continue to do. Our current boards and committees and the staff at the Municipal Center have worked hard and often thanklessly to keep us on the right path forward. I look forward to the opportunity to continue to define that path. For me, that's a path that includes our commitment to fiscal responsibility, our commitment to commercial growth. It's also a path that includes affordable housing so that people who work in Grafton can also afford to live in Grafton, and so that people who have spent their lifetime in Grafton can continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Richard, your opening remarks.
Hi, I'm Richard Whitney. I'm a lifelong resident of 65 years in town. I grew up right down the street from this school. This used to be the school. And I've gone through the school system, and also I went on into the United States Army. I also married my high school sweetheart, and we've been together for 43 years this year. And we have 2 wonderful daughters, a son-in-law, and 2 wonderful grandchildren. I got back into politics is for one reason: we need help. And I think that all the people that I do service during the week have asked me to do this. I used to be on the CPC a long time ago, and I worked endlessly with that, the Conservation Commission. And I also was a state auctioneer up until about 10 years ago, and that's when I retired. I am retired. I am around town all the time. I see that we have plenty of projects coming in, of 40B projects that want to be 40B projects instead they want to be LIP programs. We need to have somebody that comes to the meetings every week and sits here and learns what's going on. Because if you don't sit here and learn what's going on, you don't know what's going on. You got to stay up to date with everything. I help out anybody in town, seniors. Also, I am for affordable housing, and I made it perfectly clear I do just about anything for affordable housing. When we were kids living in this town, it was the poor kids and the rich kids, and that's all it was. And that's where I fell into, was the poor kids. And I'll tell you right now, if you buy a house in Grafton 20 years ago and you only paid $300,000, you sell it today, you're going to get $700,000. Good profit. I mean, our town is growing, and what we need to do is look at the master plan and study it, of seeing how our build out is going to be over the next few years, and find out where we're going to have industrial land, light industry land that we can use. That's one of my goals too. And the affordable housing is using the affordable housing to bring employees into the town, give them a break on housing, if we can do that. Other than that, I'm done.
Okay, good time. Thank you, Richard. Andrew, I'm going to ask you to provide the first response to question 1. If anybody needs me to repeat a question, I'm very happy to do it. At the end, if you'd like to offer a rebuttal or follow-up remarks, you're very welcome to. You'll have 30 seconds to do that. We did have another combination of questions. Some were submitted via email in advance of the event. Some came from the audience. I'll try to toggle back and forth as we did with the school committee candidates. So I'm going to start with a couple that were submitted via email in advance of the event. This one actually was from the League of Women Voters. Question is, what qualifications and or experiences are important for a select board member, and why are you uniquely qualified? And I can repeat that if you like.
Sure.
What qualifications and or experiences are important for a select board member? Why are you uniquely qualified?
So for me, what makes an effective select board leader is breeding in an environment of respect and mutual respect between people, a comfortable environment where people are free and able to express their ideas, because without that, people are afraid to speak up, and it can whatever, I forget where I'm going with that. Anyways, why am I uniquely qualified? I've had a wide breadth of committee experience, and across various committees and observing various committees in my short time in town government. I think it's important to understand the entirety of the process. Town government in itself is confusing enough, but then once you get into specific committees and knowing what your charges are and effectively working towards both those charges and goals.
What's that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Richard.
Okay. Why do I think well, first of all, I used to be a business owner. I retired, like I said, when I was 50 years old. I don't need the money. I do this for giving back to my town. I want to work with the people of town, of Grafton, people that talk to me every single day that I'm around town driving in my truck, talking, stopping, listening. I hear their gripes. I hear what they're doing, what they're not doing. Okay? Why can't we do this? Why can't the select board help us with this? Why can't recreation help with this? I met this wonderful couple that live at Riverview Apartments. They turned around and cleaned up the ballpark down there. And the driveway was such a mess down there. And they said, well, can you do something about it? They called me and asked me. Sure. Within 2 days, after talking to Paul Canoia and Evan, it was all resolved and fixed. Beautiful, done. Nice job. So I am a person that gets things done. I don't want to sit around and say, well, we could do this, we could do that. Let's get it done. Let's get it done now and get our wants taken care of, not our need. Take our needs to get done, not our wants.
Thank you, Richard. Anne Marie.
I think some qualities that would be important for a select board member would include having involvement in boards and committees previously. Gives you a little bit of a historical perspective and a little bit of knowledge of institutional knowledge in terms of what happens up here. Having a history of leadership, I think, would be a helpful thing as well. And being able to work with a variety of people and being able to work collaboratively with a variety of people. Knowledge of town history is important, in addition to having a vision of what we want for this, or what the individual might want for the town going forward. Certainly an ability to listen, to step back and try to see the big picture. And again, just a general knowledge of town operations, the way the town meeting works, and things like that I think would be helpful. In terms of the qualities that I bring that I think would benefit the town in terms of the select board, I think I certainly have demonstrated a commitment, or my commitment to the town of Grafton, just with the volunteer work that both myself and my husband and my children actually have done in this town. I've served on a variety of boards and committees, including a multitude of leadership positions. I have a global view. I look at the needs of the entire, I plan to look at the needs of the entire town and not just one specific issue. And I, again, to mirror what Carl said in his statement, I have no other agenda other than moving our town forward in a positive direction. Thanks, yep.
Okay. So everyone's had an opportunity to respond to question 1. Are there any follow-up comments or any rebuttals?
No, I'm good.
All right. So, Richard, I'm going to ask you to respond first to
Yep.
question number 2. Question number 2 is, what do you say to voters in Grafton that may be concerned about affordable housing? What do you think the advantages and disadvantages may be in increasing our affordable housing stock in town?
Good question. I love it. Our affordable housing stock is good for the next, we're right now in a safe harbor. We have 1 to 2 years left to be in this safe harbor, okay? Our affordable housing, every year it's going to change, and we're going to have to relook at what's going on. This is why I talked about the LIP program. Instead of people going 40B, they're starting to do the LIP program, which the select board is already in the process of doing one, okay? And where the town has not done one, I've reached out to the other towns of Auburn that is doing the one with the same people, and found out exactly what they got out of this LIP program. Where a LIP program is to help out, is to the town and the developer come together and pass it on and come to an agreement. But we get to ask them for certain things, and hopefully we get that, and sometimes you might not get it. You will get it. It all depends on how much they want to build here. But in essence, affordable housing, we need it. We're always going to need it, because without it, our kids, your kids, are not going to be able to live here.
Thank you, Richard.
Do you mind just repeating the question? Sorry.
Not at all. Question is, what do you say to voters in Grafton that may be concerned about affordable housing? What do you think the advantages and disadvantages may be in increasing our affordable housing stock in town?
Okay, I'm at the beginning of the question, I'm not quite sure in terms of their questioning. Well, anyways, so affordable housing is obviously something that we're addressing in our town. My understanding is that we have just either moved into safe harbor or we are close to being there, and I think that that's great. It gives us an opportunity to now work with developers, as Richard said, and maybe be a little bit more creative. In my own home, I have 2 kids that are college graduates that are having a difficult time finding housing right now. So I'm faced with this issue in my home. My elderly parents, in order to move them closer to me, that's an issue as well. You know, coming into this town or towns around obviously is an issue. So I am willing to look at plans for affordable housing. I'm happy that we've gotten to the threshold that we were asked to get to, and I will, you know, look at all plans and programs moving forward and try to vet them out. I think the challenge is not so much affordable housing, but just housing in general and the number of units that are coming on potentially in our town. We just need to be careful in terms of looking at the infrastructure and you know, all the other things that come along with that. But that would be more related to housing in general. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne Marie. Andrew.
Yes, thank you. I think there's probably some of that concern that voters may have towards affordable housing, maybe, as Anne Marie alluded to, kind of misplaced, because there is a lot of housing growth going on in Grafton right now, but that doesn't mean it's all dedicated to be affordable housing. To me, I see affordable housing as a critical need. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. We've had years of growth with, you know, large single-family homes that do nothing to move our town budget in a positive direction. Affordable housing can be as net revenue positive for the town as the addition of several small businesses, so that I think that's something to consider. It's necessary for our law enforcement, fire department, first responders, things like that, people who need to live in town in order to be able to fill those positions. It's also critical for our seniors. You know, we have several who, you know, with the loss of a spouse, the loss of an income, Social Security, pensions, etc., find themselves in a difficult position where they're forced to downsize and there's no place for them to downsize to. And we'd like them, you know, they've contributed for years to this town, and we'd like to be able to take care of them in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone's had an opportunity to respond to question 2. Are there any follow-up remarks? Richard.
Well, I'd like to get back on question 2 about the affordable housing, and I agree with Anne Marie, and I agree with Andy. Okay, we do need more affordable housing. Okay, every year we're going to lose some, so we need to gain it, and to get people in here. I mean, my family has lived here over 200 years, as going backwards, and like I said, I came from a poor family, and right now, affordable housing is the way that my children,
Okay.
their children.
Thank you.
She gave me 15.
Anne Marie, would you like to have a follow-up response?
No.
No, thank you.
Andrew. Okay, thank you all. So for question 3, we're going to start back with Anne Marie again. This one came from the audience tonight. Question is, I would like to understand your vision/plan to improve economic activity in our town. And I'm going to say it again. Would like to understand your vision/plan to improve economic activity in our town.
I guess I would start with, let's look at our current businesses. We have a lot of businesses in town, actually. I went up to the clerk's office recently and got a full listing of all the small businesses and businesses in general. So I think that we need to look at the businesses that we currently have and try to be good neighbors to them, try to facilitate their growth, make sure that they're in good shape, and that we are doing everything we can to keep our businesses in town and keep them pleased. In terms of going forward, it's exciting that we do have some, a couple of developments coming in that include some business component including over by the train station, ultimately but on Upton Road. So I will do everything I can to try to make sure that businesses are accommodated, coming into our town. It's obviously something that we need in terms of growing our tax base. We can't do this just on residential alone. I'm a small business owner myself, so I'm certainly sensitive to this, and I will do anything that I can to, like I said, first and foremost, look at the businesses that we have. Can we grow them? Can we support them? And then additionally, of course, work with our economic development committee and the individual that we have that works over there, the staff, to see what I can do to help support them to bring in other businesses. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you. I agree with what Anne Marie just said, that ideally we would do everything we can to reach out to our current small businesses and see what we can continue to do to support them. I think we need to continue to work with the Economic Development Commission. I look forward to gaining some of their insight and gathering possible options that we have that way. Commercial growth and business growth are something that everybody wants, and it's not easily done, and I don't think it's attainable by one person. It's going to take a group effort. I think it's going to take some creative thinking. I think Grafton tends to be behind the 8 ball a little bit because we don't have access to the Route 9 corridor that some of our surrounding towns do. So we're going to need to be a little creative in that approach. I think affordable housing is an area where we can have some growth and bring in some net positive revenue while also helping people who are in need.
So,
yep, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Of course, yeah. So, would like to understand your vision/plan to improve economic activity in our town.
Okay. Well, my vision is we have to keep the small businesses going, no matter what it takes, because that's our backbone right now. Number 2 is the plan to get more businesses in town. We need to come up with ideas with multiple groups of board members from recreation, planning board, building department, to see if we can get some more buildings in here and some more businesses in here. Because that's the only way we're going to come about for more revenue. Because other than that, we can't go back to the homeowner and keep saying every 5 years, a proposition 2.5, we got to do this. No, we need to sit down and talk to them, work it out with them, even if we had to give them, I'm just using this as an example, like a 1% tax break to expand their business and to hire new workers. We can do something. There has to be something to do. And affordable housing right now is going to help. But it's not the end of everything, but it will help.
Thanks, everyone. Any follow-up comments or rebuttals?
Can I add something, or is it more?
If you'd like 30 seconds to add something, that's fine, and everybody will have an opportunity to do so.
Okay, that's all right. I know an idea that came up in my home not too long ago, and that actually a couple of people now have reached out to me on the campaign trail, and I just forgot to mention this, but tourism in the town of Grafton. We have the Blackstone River. We have our historical society. We have the Willard Clock Museum. There's actually a lot of things that our town has, and we capitalize on it a little bit at Christmas, or over the holidays, I should say, with our Christmas or holidays on the common, or whatever it's called these days. But that was another idea, and someone mentioned even like a trolley service or some sort of transportation that would support
Thank
that.
you, Anne Marie.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Andrew, would you like a follow-up comment?
Sure, thank you. I'd just like to briefly note that, yes, I agree with everything that everybody said and our small business backbone. But I think it's worth mentioning to residents and helping them to understand that in order to really make a dent in that tax base, we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, in additional revenue to offset a lot of those costs. It's something that's much easier discussed than done.
Thank you. Richard, would you like an opportunity to
Yes,
speak?
I agree with both of them. We need to do something different. If it is to get more people to the Willie Clark Museum or something on the Common, South Grafton, we have that wonderful park down in South Grafton that seems like nobody ever uses it. Now we have the wonderful Common that has just been made over, and, you know, all the money that we put into that and the center of town, and, well, we need to do other things too. I mean, we can't just strive on.
Thank you, Richard. Okay.
I know when to shut up.
So we have another question from the audience for question 4. And question 4, we're going to ask Andrew to
Are you
start.
gonna make me go first again?
Yep.
It's your turn.
How, this is a little different. How do you think your board, this being the select board, should be influenced by public opinion? How do you think your board, and for our purposes that's the select board, should be influenced by public opinion?
It's a great question. Thank you to whoever submitted it. I think there is a fine line that the select board needs to walk. You are representative of the voters of Grafton and the residents of Grafton, and you need to be open to their opinions and listening and taking all that in. But you are the body that helps lead this town. So ultimately, the decision lies with you, and you as a select board member need to do your best to feel that you're representing the opinions and the views of the people you're representing. But at the same time, the views and goals of the overall town, and not just sometimes a select few, which is unfortunate because you want everybody to be happy and you want everybody to get what they want. But at the end of the day, you're tasked with what's best for the town. So, there's, yes, you should be listening. Yes, you should be out there and accessible. But, ultimately, at the end of the day, everything lies with you.
Okay. Richard.
Well, I think we should, all honestly, if you're a select board member, you should be listening to your constituents that are out there, because they're the one who put you on that board, number one. It doesn't mean that you're shutting them off. You got to listen to them, because there might be something in what they're saying that you're missing. And if you miss something, shame on you. And to not work with them, and the select board members, are the last persons. I just lost my whole train of thought. I'm sorry. But anyways, make a long story, let's cut it down. I think we should listen to them, but we have to draw the line of what we actually can do for them and do the best job we can. That's it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I went blank.
Totally fine.
Happens all.
Thank you, Richard.
Nerve-wracking up here.
Anne-Marie.
I've always been open and transparent and willing to take feedback in any roles that I have enjoyed over the years. I certainly, even during the campaign, I'm trying to talk to as many people as I can. I have as many outlets that folks can get in touch with me. So I'll certainly listen to constituents on various issues. In terms of being influenced by public opinion, that's an interesting way to put it. I will listen to the public and concerns on various issues. I will then do the due diligence up here at the town hall on a particular issue to see where we should be, opining in that circumstance, and then look to the board, 5-member board, to try to determine, what do we think is the best course of action. So, open to all of it. Thanks.
Okay. Any rebuttals or follow-up remarks? Okay, thank you. For question 5, Richard, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow.
This was another email question. It says, climate change is a concern to many. Many people have started purchasing electric vehicles or hybrids. What steps can be taken in Grafton to install more charging stations? And I'm going to repeat this. Climate change is a concern to many. Many people have started purchasing electric vehicles or hybrids. What steps can be taken in Grafton to install more charging stations?
Well, all honestly, I know there was just a company or a town in the United States that just went all, by 2026 will not sell any more gasoline product vehicles in their town. So they're gonna have to put in charging systems. But my question is, who's going to pay for them? The town, or the car manufacturers, or like National Grid? It would be a burden on the town right away if we had to put in 50 units at, say, $10,000 a unit for a charging system where they wouldn't be protected from vandals or something else. I am not against going green 100%, but we have to come up with an idea and a plan of how to do it and do it right. Because if we don't, here we go, I mean, like the ones at the Auburn Mall. 9 out of 10 work, and you know, when you're down there, and you know, go to see somebody's vehicle and it's not working, it's not charging. I mean, I get called down there a lot for tow vehicles out of there. So it's...
Thank you, Richard. Anne Marie.
Well, this is in my wheelhouse. I certainly would love to see a lot more chargers. I'm thrilled that we have the 2 over at the library, and I spoke with that library building committee at length during the course of that project to ensure that that would happen. We have an electric vehicle in our home. My husband drives a electric vehicle that has a small gas tank. I was just up in Stowe, Vermont for a board meeting, and we were discussing just this issue that I would love to have an electric vehicle, but to get from here to there is an issue. So on the East Coast, we have a infrastructure problem. In California, that can be done. There are plenty of them along the way. I think, Richard, the ones in the Auburn Mall are just Tesla.
Yeah,
So
they
that
are
doesn't,
Teslas.
So that doesn't help, like in our family, that doesn't help us because we don't have a Tesla. So there are a variety of grant programs out there that we should be going for. The town of Sutton can be a model in this respect because they really have a great infrastructure. They have them, I think, at the high school. Don't quote me, but I think at the town hall. I'd love to see some of our town vehicles start going in that direction. Not that we're going to sell perfectly good vehicles and buy electric straight away, but as we're transitioning, that would be a great thing to do. So I'm happy to tackle this and look into grants, and I'm not a grant writer, but I believe that we can fund that through grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Andrew.
Thank you. Yes, I share that concern that I think we are behind on our charging infrastructure here in town. You know, I think as Anne Marie mentioned, it does tend to be an East Coast deficiency. You know, it's certainly something that I would suggest very similarly. You know, we look into what type of grants we have at the federal level. I believe recently one of our state representatives met with members of select boards from surrounding towns to discuss possibly how we could get some of that infrastructure in town, or where some of that federal funding could be spent locally to upgrade that infrastructure. We are actually in the process of converting some of the municipal fleet to both electric and hybrid vehicles. So I think that infrastructure won't be far behind. For me personally, it's difficult to say how we'd get there, you know, beyond the grant writing and stuff, because it's not something that I've had to look into myself. But with the knowledge that some of our town vehicles will be switching over to that, I'm confident that we'll have the infrastructure in place to not only service them and provide energy to them, but to the general public as well.
Thank you. Any follow remarks or rebuttals? Okay, so we have time for one more question. Anne Marie, you'll have the first opportunity to respond. After that, then I will request that everybody make a 1 minute, up to 1 minute closing statement, and Andrew, you'll lead on that. So, question from the audience tonight. Does Grafton have a structural deficit? And if so, how would you address it? Does Grafton have a structural deficit? And if so, how would you address it? When you're ready, Anne Marie, you'll begin, please.
Sure. My husband served for 10 years on the Finance Committee, and I've discussed this a little bit with him, but my feeling is I don't know that we have a structural deficit. I'm not quite sure what that means. Every year we balance the budget. So we look at our income and we look at our expenses, and all of the departments, the Finance Committee, and the town administrator obviously work hard to make sure that that budget balances. If what this person is talking about are perhaps needs such as you onboard a building, a school, for example, that's funded, but then you have to fill the school, right? Teachers, various things. But again, that's worked through in the budget process. Another take on it I thought was, perhaps something at our condominium association, of which I'm the president, we are looking at a report right now that is outlining for us in the next 30 years what will come up in terms of capital needs, decks, roofs, etc. And perhaps that's what this person is referring to. So if we were able to fund in advance everything that we saw that might be coming down the pike, being roofs, buildings, etc. And if that's the case, it's pretty much, there's really not any town or anyone that can fund 100% of their moving forward potential capital. I'm not sure that I've answered the question because I'm not entirely sure I understand what structural deficit is, but maybe someone else does. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Andrew.
So yes, I would agree that Grafton does have a structural deficit. I don't think we're the only town that suffers from one. With the increase in town services comes an increase in the draw on our budgets. And while we do balance them every year and get them to where they need to be, over the past few years, that's been supplemented by our override funds. We were fortunate this year that we were able to use some ARPA funding and increase Chapter 70 money to the schools to help more or less recoup a year from our current override and push that out further. But, in a situation where the town spending outpaces the revenue that's coming in, without significant growth, we're going to be facing these same difficulties every year. Same thing. Train just left.
It's late.
Yes. Yes, I do agree we have a structural deficit. Like I said, I think we, when it comes down to it, you either cut services or you figure out how you can grow. I'm not a person who's in favor of cutting services. I think we have lots of people in town who rely on those services, small businesses who rely on those services. So it's on us to figure out how we can grow and close that structural deficit.
Thank you, Andrew. Richard.
Yes, I think we do have a structural deficit, and we definitely have to work on it, of getting more affordable housing, more businesses in town. Like Andy said, every year we do balance the budget, and that's from taking money from one place to another and just to make it work. But we still have to be boots on the ground to get everybody in line together and take I'm losing it here tonight, and take and make sure that we do have enough to cover our expenses. And in doing so, we have to come up with ideas. There's going to be, in a few years or a couple of years, we're going to have to do the schools over. There's 3 schools. And where are we going to get that money? We're going to probably have to bond it out. I mean, to redo the 3 schools. And, you know, and you're looking at probably $20 million per school. And so, yeah, our deficit is, we're always going to be in a deficit. It's, you know, we balance a budget, but we're in a deficit.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Any rebuttals or follow-up remarks? Okay. Andrew, I'll ask you, please, to start with your final statement. You have up to 1 minute for your closing statement. Thank you.
I'll keep it brief. Just want to thank you all again. Really appreciated these questions. Some good hard-hitting ones in there. Thank everybody in attendance. If you have any other questions, I would encourage you to get in touch with me. My Facebook page is facebook.com/Andy4SB. The word, not the number. I'm available. You can reach me there through Messenger or any number of things. If you run into me on the street, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have there. And I look forward to everybody turning out on Tuesday the 17th, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Richard.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody in the League of Women Voters for letting us be here tonight. This is my first time, and it's been a pleasure and it's been an experience. I'm sorry, folks, that here in the audience and at home that I choked up on 3 questions. Okay? I thought I did my homework. I did, but my mind just went blank on a couple answers. But it comes down to, you can put up all the signs in the world you want, but it's getting you to the polling place on May 17th. And I made a promise to myself, and I've been telling everybody, come out and vote. Get your proxy vote. Absentee. Just get out and vote. Don't care who you vote for. One of the 3 of us or the 4 of us, that's fine with me. But vote in your heart.
Thank you, Richard. Anne Marie.
Hi, I think that it's great that Grafton has a choice in these 2 particular board, the select board and the school committee. And I hope that we can build on this going forward, where we get more people involved and bring more people into the fold. So this is fabulous. I wish all of the candidates in this race and the other races the best of luck over the next 2 weeks. I am on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, if you want to look more information about me or about the campaign. I also have a website, which is a great place to look. I'm putting a lot of information out there, and you can also interact with me via that. And it's www.annemariefoley.com. There's no E in Anne, by the way. I feel that I'm a well-rounded person and that I bring a diverse past and experiences, and I think that will be helpful to the board. I plan to assess all of our town's needs and try to make sound policy decisions based on the big picture. I'll be a reasonable voice, and I'll put in the necessary time and effort to represent all of the members of our community. I'm committed to fostering an engaged and informed community going forward, and I thank the League again for putting on things like this to that extent. I would be honored to get your vote May 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Made it 9 o'clock.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie, Andrew, and Richard, and also to Carl, who couldn't be with us tonight. I'd also like to thank the school committee candidates who appeared earlier, and also the folks who came on early for seats on the library trustees, planning board, and the school committee who are running unopposed. We appreciate each and every one of you. The League of Women Voters likes to say that democracy is not a spectator sport. We appreciate your participation tonight and in the election process. Good luck to each and every one of you. A couple of general reminders. This program is going to be rebroadcast on your local access cable until the election. And a final reminder that the town elections in Grafton will be on Tuesday, May 17th. Please vote. Thank you and have a good night.